After auditing 400 plus podcasts, I've discovered common growth mode and mistakes that slows podcasters down from faster growth and monetization. Despite publishing valuable content, these podcasters often get bogged down in the wrong details, never making a real breakthrough or seeing an ROI from their shows. So while most podcasters waste years on low impact activities, you'll discover which popular strategies you should completely ignore and what specific actions to focus on instead, and fast track your way to faster podcast growth and monetization without the guesswork. So here are 30 high impact podcast growth and monetization tips. Let's dive straight in. Business growth. Start growing your list from episode 1. I don't care. It doesn't really matter if you have nothing to sell. It doesn't matter, right? Your podcast is a relationship builder, which is great, but your email list is where you convert listeners into clients. And when you don't have that bridge, you're essentially leaving a ton of money on the table, because let's say you have a weekly episode and that's once a week. That's 1 day out of 7. What's going on with the other 6 days? Are you communicating with your audience? How are you nurturing them? How are you providing more value to them? How are you adding additional touch points to remain top of mind so that when they want to buy, they can buy from you? And an email list allows you, once again, to convert way more of your listeners into paying clients. Use your listener community to validate your offer before creating them. The most profitable programs are those that are developed in response to specific needs of your audience. Audience has a voice, so start listening. Don't just create a program or a product or whatever you're trying to create to sell to your audience in isolation. Get that feedback from your community first. Identify the 20% of podcast activities that drives 80% of your client acquisition results. For most experts, it's going to be topic selection, guest selection. Honestly, I would say prioritizing solo episodes over actual guests. And finally, your call to action strategy. So making sure that your actual content is perfectly linked to the call to action is a natural next step when you invite someone to join your email list, grab a freebie, want to work with you to reach specific outcome. The point is, if you focus on these key pillars, which is again topic selection, guest selection, which can also be format selection, i.e. solo episodes, and your call to action strategy, these are really the most impactful things you can do to drive more client acquisition results from your podcast. And everything else, well, they're way less impactful and you can ignore them. Do not try to grow on multiple different platforms until you have a team. Spreading yourself too thin is a recipe for disaster. Trying to grow on your podcast, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, all it does is dilute your impact. Now you're trying to be everywhere, but you haven't mastered one channel first. So what's the likelihood, if you can't master one channel, not to talk about mastering all of them? Now I know that a bunch of people scream out at the top of their lungs to be everywhere. You need to be everywhere, post everywhere. What I didn't tell you is they've got a gigantic team with an unlimited budget, and each team member are working on a specific department. Until you're in a spot with your podcast when that is possible, just focus on one platform at a time. You learn more from 1 hour with a successful entrepreneur than 20 hours of researching online. Find mentors who have the exact results you want and invest in learning their systems. The difference between a $100 microphone and a $1,000 microphone is barely noticeable to listeners, but the difference between an amateur and a professional strategy is worth 6 or even 7 figures annually. I've seen this time and time again. Again, this goes back to the 80 and 20, the 80% of actions that drive the results and the 80% of activities that don't. Don't stress about your equipment and all this fancy stuff. Really stress more about your overall strategy. And an easy way to shortcut your way, because if you're not educated, if you don't know how to grow a podcast, if you don't know how to monetize your show, if you're worried about, how do I craft the perfect CTA, if you're worried about the guest selection, or if you're worried about how to properly execute on solo episodes in a way that attracts, nurtures, and converts listeners into ready to buy clients, if you're unsure about that, just know, hey, look, there are programs out there. We have a program called the Get More Listeners Academy, but there's also tons. It doesn't have to be myself. If you resonate and you like it, great, amazing. But my point is, there's no reason why you shouldn't have the education around how to grow and monetize your podcast effectively. People have done it in the past. It's not guesswork. It's just having the right strategy, the right systems, and the right support to make that happen for yourself. So again, invest in coaching and membership when you're getting started. When you're ready to finally take things to the next level, always create episode titles and descriptions first. That should be the priority. Then build out your content to deliver on those promises. All this will do is going to keep you focused, and it prevents you meandering through through your episodes and forces you to create content that fulfills a very specific value proposition. Educational podcasts play by different roles compared to entertainment shows. You're not competing with Joe Rogan for entertainment value. You're positioning yourself as a specific solution to a problem. Focus on the transformation, not just information. Differentiate your show through your unique methodology, not just your personality, because everyone thinks, oh, it's my personality, I'm great, I'm fantastic, I'm so unique. And yeah, you probably are very unique, so I'm not arguing that, but it's really important. We found that the best performing podcasts, when it comes to turning listeners into clients, they have proprietary frameworks, meaning they have a unique way of delivering very specific, predictable results on a consistent basis. It's not just them being an engaging personality, they have something unique to sell to an audience. Think in 3 to 5 years authority building periods, which is very painful and very hard for a lot of people to do. It's very hard for me to do as well, but something I'm trying to get better at. Because the truth is, 6 months, can you get a lot done in 6 months? Absolutely. Most of our clients get incredible results in 6 months. But I know the results we get them in 6 months is nothing in comparison to where they're going to be 3 to 5 years from now if they stick with the strategy and system that they've built. So again, 6 months really isn't enough to establish true expertise. The podcasters making 6 and 7 figures have a long-term vision that informs their short-term execution. And again, you should do the same. Execution excellence. When others start copying your format, it's time to celebrate. It means you're becoming an industry standard. The moment that your approach starts to get imitated is when your first mover advantage starts paying dividends. Keep your podcast business model simple. Complexity creates failure points. The most profitable podcast businesses I've ever seen have a very straightforward model, meaning they grow a podcast audience, they nurture them through their email, and they invite them to join their high-ticket program. It's really that simple. Don't create content just because you want to make it. Unless you're ready and prepared for it to underperform, stick with the topics your audience has demonstrated they actually want. So don't just guess. Save your creative experiments for once you've established a solid foundation. This is more important, especially if you've kind of plateaued and you're not growing and the show isn't moving at the pace you'd like, or if you're not generating the income you'd want. It's really important that you really give your audience what they want. It sounds so obvious, but people will only listen to things that are relevant to them. That sounds so like blatantly obvious, but as an important reminder, batch record episodes, recording 4 to 8 episodes in a single day creates massive efficiency gains. My clients who batch consistently outproduce those who don't while working fewer hours. Never miss an upload. Even if you have an established audience, taking 2 weeks off can affect your growth rate significantly. You can create what we call emergency episodes that you can use to republish just to keep your audience in the loop and keep them engaged with your best content whilst you're taking time off. So yeah, I'm not saying you're not allowed a vacation. Of course you are. You can do whatever you want, right? But it's really important to know that just because you want a little break doesn't mean that your podcast should have a break, because listeners, they're going to go somewhere else. They're still not, they're not just going to stop listening to podcasts or stop consuming content. If they stop getting their content from you, they're going to go somewhere else. Creating genuine curiosity is your most powerful engagement tool. Learning to craft open loops that keeps listeners engaged to hear your next point is more valuable than a production technique. Growing a profitable podcast is more of a mental challenge than a technical one. The podcasters who succeed aren't necessarily the most talented, they're just the most resilient. Expect the journey to test your commitment repeatedly, and I can't stress this enough. There's going to be times when shit just gets hard and you want to quit and you want to stop, because to be honest with you, it can feel like bullshit. You've done all this work, spending all this time investing into the show, and things still aren't moving in the right direction. Again, that's more of a mental challenge than it is a technical one. There's always a next step you can take. There's always a new strategy you can test out. There's always some small piece of action you can take. But you won't take that if you're not fully committed. You won't take that if you aren't mentally resilient through the ups and the downs of podcasting. Learn from underperforming episodes, but don't obsess over them. Extract the lesson, implement the improvement, then move forward. Dwelling on past mistakes creates hesitation that kills your momentum. If you master content strategy, content packaging, and have a clear delivery, the analytics will take care of itself, meaning your show will just grow. So focus on the inputs that you have control over, not the outcomes that you have zero control over. Find an accountability partner at your level, where you guys meet monthly, you share what's working, and you solve challenges together. This relationship alone can double your podcast growth rate, because you're learning and you're keeping each other accountable and supporting each other on your journey. Podcasting can be super lonely, so honestly, this is huge, and we make sure in our program to facilitate this amongst our clients to keep themselves accountable. Client acquisition. Never appear on a brand new podcast as a guest. They typically quit within 10 episodes and your interview will never get published. Focus on established shows with proven consistency. Grow genuine relationships with others in your niche. The podcasting world is way smaller than what you think, and the collaborative opportunities far outweigh the competitive threat. Guard your reputation obsessively. In the expert industry, trust is your number one most valuable currency. One questionable partnership or promotion can literally ruin years of credibility building. Significant financial returns comes after you've established your authority, not before. Most podcasters give up before monetization becomes effortless. Remove problematic listeners from your community immediately. One toxic community member can drive away dozens of your ideal clients. Consistency in quality will feel pointless at times. That says will feel point. That's so funny. Will feel pointless for a very long time. When the show finally reaches critical mass, all the past episodes becomes massive valuable assets because what? Your listeners and new listeners will go back to your old content and build an entire back catalog. So trust the process through the desert phase. Don't chase perfection, chase connection with your ideal client. Perfectionism is simply procrastination disguised. Your audience care far more about your insights than your production quality. Be consistent with your publishing schedule. The fastest growing podcasts release the same day, the same week, every week. So banking episodes if you need to allows you to maintain this consistency even during busy periods. If your podcast is optimized for podcast SEO, try having a different cover art each